As I said before, my favorite movie of all time is The Princess Bride. In fact, lately, Gwen and I bought a copy of the book by Peter Goldman when we were in Morro Bay, which I'd read in high school, but she had not read the actual book. So I've been reading it aloud to her while she cooks. Free entertainment, what can I say? There is a scene near the end of the movie where Inigo Montoya, who is the world's greatest swordsman until he met the Man in Black, and to which his nemesis Vizzini would often say, "Inconceivable." Right. Well, the Man in Black manages to beat Inigo's sword, Fezzik the giant's strength, and Vizzini the intellectual genius's genius, because he really wasn't as smart as he thought he was. And later on, you find a very, very, very drunk Inigo Montoya in the village of Thebes, the Thebes forest, which is being emptied. And he's sitting there going, "Vizzini, you told me when it all fails, go back to the beginning. So this is the beginning. This is where I am. This is where I'm going to stay. I will not be moved. I am waiting for Vizzini." Fezzik finds him, knocks out the guard, and tries to arrest him, and nurses him back to health. It popped into my mind as I was reading today's gospel, because that's exactly what Simon Peter is doing in this story. The man who was his leader, the person who gave him ways to plan things, to figure things out, was gone. Even though there had been resurrection sightings and things along those lines, I still imagine, would we feel a little bit lost in spite of seeing Jesus resurrected if we were in their shoes? Keep in mind, their lives are still threatened by Rome. So what does Peter do? Well, there's one thing I know I can do in the midst of this powerlessness. It's the one thing I used to do before I met Jesus. I was a fisherman. My father would be very, very sympathetic to this notion, because my father is an avid bass fisherman. And it's a very calming experience. So his friends were like, "You know what, we'll go with you, because what else are we going to do?" So he goes back to the beginning. Then, what happens when they go back to the beginning? Nothing. Not a single fish. Keep in mind, these guys spent their lives learning how to fish. And they're not fishing with rods and reels and lures. They're fishing with nets. What kind of fisherman who's a professional fisherman can't catch fish with a net? Lucky for us, the story is less about a literal interpretation of them literally fishing, but more about what it said about what they were doing with their lives. But I'm going to come to that in a minute. Now, the pre-resurrected Christ is gone. The resurrected Christ is here. While the same person, yet not the same person, and even more glorious, even more powerful than he ever was in normal human form. You with me so far? So basically, this is where the story of Inigo Montoya, when he gets his sobriety back, realizes he's trying to get to fulfill his life mission, and he can't do it because he doesn't have Vizzini to plan for him. But then he says, "Wait, no, I don't need Vizzini. I need the Man in Black. He beat all three of us. He's the person I need." So not only does he recognize that what he had before that he cannot have access to is gone, bless you, but he accepts that this is not what he needs anymore, and he moves into this realm of searching for an even more glorious leader. So when they hear this man on the beach yell out, "Children," which any man who yells out to me, "Children," I'm like, excuse me? I'm 41 years old. I am no child. He yells out, "You haven't caught any fish, have you?" And you're like, "No, we're just doing our impersonation of an empty room." Here's your sign. Yeah, of course we didn't catch anything. I would be so frustrated if someone yelled that at me after a night of not catching fish when I was already deflated. He says, "Cast the net on the other side. Try the other side. You'll find what you're looking for." They're like, "Well, stranger things have happened when we've done this. So they cast it over. Holy shnikes, Batman. 153 fish. Now, that is an oddly specific number. Do you want to know where that comes from? Greek zoologists concluded at that time that there are 153 species of fish in the world. So every species of fish was in that net, and yet it did not break. Who is a strange person who manages to get them all the fish in the world? Well, of course, the resurrected Christ. Now, I'm very comfortable with being around my father and my brother and friends when we're fishing. I'm not so sure that I would have been as comfortable with Peter's choice of clothing or lack thereof. And I find that interesting that he was naked in the boat, but he goes swimming. What does he do? He throws his robe on. Now, I've been swimming by accident because I got pushed into a pool with clothes on. I know how much that drags you down. But Peter was probably a good swimmer. 100 yards, it's nothing. He goes out there and gets to him. So, we've got the old to the new, and yet some common threads, but new experiences with the earthly Christ to the resurrected Christ. Then we have the fishermen who were called by Jesus to be fishers of men or humans, who seemingly abandoned them, go back to what they were supposed to be doing, are not successful until they follow what this person tells them to do. So, going back to the beginning kind of works, but it really wasn't what they were meant to be doing. But Jesus, in his very unmerciful, ruthless, brutal tactics, just dismissed them outright, abandoned them because they abandoned him, and never spoke to them again, right? No. He meets them where they are, in their imperfections, in their fears, and in their uncertainties. Just as he met Thomas in his doubts, just as he met the women, who were the first ones, of course, to see Jesus resurrected, in their faithfulness to what they were supposed to do and their courage. He meets everyone where they are, how they need to be met. So, once again, it's the loaves and fishes on the beach. Again, earthly Jesus, resurrected Jesus, doing common things here. But again, it's not coming full circle, it's coming full spiral. And an even broader spiral when you think about it. But my favorite aspect of the story is the one where I can't help but think of Old Greg. And if you haven't seen Old Greg, it's weird. It's a British comedy show called Mighty Boosh. But he did this thing like, "Do you love me? Are you playing your love games with me?" But anyway, my brain. Jesus asked Peter, again, Simon Peter, whose name is actually Simon, not Peter. Peter is a title in the way that Christ is a title. Peter means rock. Now, if the rock denies Jesus 3 times and yells and swears and lies, how much of a rock of a church is he really? Not much. He's become rubble. He's become sand. He is no longer Peter. He doesn't deserve that title. The man yelling death before dishonor starts lying and denying his own person because he's afraid. With all his braggadocious, "I am so strong, I am man, blah, 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 blah. Don't listen to those women, listen to me. I don't know. Poor guy. He's feeling pretty rotten, and he's not sure what to do with it all. But he's also kind of, I'll say, that boy is as sharp as a bowling ball. When Jesus asked him the first time, he says, "Do you love me?" He's like, "Yeah, I love you." Yeah. The point goes right over his head. But he calls him Peter, right? No. Jesus calls him Simon. He's not Peter yet. He's back to Simon. It's a really important piece to recognize that there are consequences for when we fail. There are consequences when we lie and deny that which we hold ourselves to. But Jesus asked him, "Simon, do you love me?" And when he said, yes, I love you, his response is, feed my lambs. Second time, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Hello, I just told you I did, Jesus. Yes, I love you. Again, whoosh, the point still goes over his head. Tend my sheep. Third time, Simon, son of John, do you love me? And now Peter still kind of misses the point, gets really hurt. I would imagine I would feel really hurt too. In fact, he's probably feeling really guilty about the fact that he denied Jesus. But he does love him. Just like anyone who has ever failed, but still loves someone, who's striven to be the right thing and fell flat on their face and let that person down. He says, you know that I love you. And he says, tend my sheep. Peter lost his role as a disciple, lost any authority that he had, and deservedly so, because of his denials. The full weight of that cannot be overstated. Jesus meets him not only by the water, meets him where he went back to the beginning, back to what was familiar, back to what was safe, back to what he knew at least would be there for him, whether or not Jesus was. Jesus meets him and not only feeds him, welcomes him, helps him find the fish, but he gives him every opportunity to reclaim his love of Christ. For every denial, there was another, do you love me? And he said, yes, I love you. And after those 3 times, he receives his role again. What is the last thing that Jesus says? Follow me. What is the disciple? One who follows away. The genius of this moment, the incredible power of this moment, is that though Peter's life is never going to be easy or simple again, after all, he becomes one of the main disciples, gets in fights with Paul, ultimately gets crucified upside down. He's given back his opportunity to be the rock on which Christ built his church. Putting aside the problematic nature of the editorial emphasis on Peter by the later church and the squelching of women's voices, this story points to us the inherent purpose of Christ. Christ meets us in our successes, in our doubts, in our failures, in our denials, in our lies, in all the ways that we break relationship. Shows us love, makes us face those things, and says, and I love you, and you are worthy, and God has called you to this role. Will you take it back up? Will you strive to be the one who follows in the way of God's love? No one gets eliminated. No one gets completely condemned. No one gets cast out. They're met where they are. Contrary to so many things that are even in our scriptures that say that people are intentionally cast out, God is trying to meet us in our lives wherever we are. Sometimes you have to go back to the beginning to find that the beginning that you once thought it was is not and never will be that beginning again for you. And if you allow yourself to get the healing you need, you will find a new beginning that takes you into a new direction that holds to that past beginning and brings you even more life than could have been possible. Because unlike Vicini, the man in black helps Inigo finally fulfill his life goal and gives him opportunity to take on new roles he never had before. Just as that is the case, the resurrected Christ meets Peter meets Simon, allows him to reclaim his role as Peter, allows him to restore his rightful place as a disciple in spite of his denial and failures, and becomes a major, major central player in the future of Christ's church on earth. So if you're feeling like you failed, or if you're feeling like you're struggling with something, or you're being forced to take on things that you've never had to take on before, and you just don't know what to do, pay attention to where Christ might be saying, hey, you're casting the net on the wrong side. It's right over here. And perhaps you may find that you've caught more fish in your life than you ever could before. Because just as they caught all the fish in all the world, that was a metaphor for the fact that they were called to fish for all the people in all the world and bring them in. So may we, as we have come back around to a new beginning, begin to pay attention to where Christ is asking us to cast our nets, to follow him, to feed his sheep, to tend his lambs, to make sure that we, even though we have not failed Christ in the same way that Peter did, although I don't fault Peter for failing the way he did, we are being led into a new beginning. Pentecost is right around the corner, and that is an incredible opportunity to refresh and allow the Spirit to breathe into us where we are going. But also to know that Easter is a time where Christ meets us, comforts us, heals us, and empowers us and prepares us for the ministry that we are to do. So thanks be to God, Jesus meets us where we are. Thanks be to God, we have the opportunity to expand even further by going back to the beginning places. And thanks be to God, our callings are independent of our worthiness. Our callings are our callings. And whether we like it or not, they have a way of catching up to us, and they spur us into what we are meant to do.